on to the next topic. So, seems like they're so. Anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to talk about some MDI discussions here. Some of the problematic things that we've discussed in an earlier video that will probably come out the same day as this. Um, so the MDI, what is like MDI is either postponed or they're putting it on the back burner right now, and I have a couple of couple concerns about that. Not really concerns because I do think that MDI is a competitive scene. It's good. Um, I think it's hard to make this a competitive nature without a competitive prize pool. And I think that's where the beginnings start. I think that's on the surface. I think that's surface level, but we can go deeper into this and why I think this. Um, so we have MDI discussions. Um, and I think a lot of MDI discussions is because the people that do MDI only play WoW. Okay, and you would say, well, why don't I want my best WoW player to play another game? And there's a couple reasons why. Because they've never experienced what it is to be in another game, competitive game scenario at the top levels of another game with another group of audience looking at them and articulating on them, reacting to them, giving them feedback, giving them um, different play model basically, um, and just and different coaches, different everything. Okay, you when you miss that out of multiple games, it's very similar to like playing multiple sports and having multiple coaches. You learn about people. You learn how to be coached. You learn what you like and what you dislike. Um, you learn how you react to stress. Um, you learn how um, what you want in a team if it's a team sport, or if it's an individual sport. What do you expect from yourself? you know so and where if it's a self sport, which WoW's both individual and team sport. It's more of a team sport. um so we have that. So you have to have camaraderie. You have to work together. You have to have proper communication. Well, all these things go into the bucket. you know and they have to be pulled out one by one. And was this effective? Was this not effective? um, Playing other games at a high level is very nice, and having that, I think, on your resume to be able to play two video games at a very high level um, shows a lot about them. A lot. Okay, shows a lot about their character, who they are. Shows them about their teammate, their quality of work, their work ethic. Do they show up? Because you are not at the top tiers of these games, and you're not. It's not like you're not putting in the work. I think in a previous video I had talked about how there needs to be a differentiation between the person that puts 15 hours in to a character versus 60 or above character, and why, and to ask yourself, why should this person that puts 60 hours into a character have to feel obligated to carry the 15-hour person? Why can't we have a system that differentiates those people? And and that's what I'm getting at from a teammate standpoint. Like, if they're a part of a guild, they're going to obviously do this but that person probably has one or two alts that they're playing along with the character that they're trying to grind up, with their guild. But it becomes more of a social thing. And then the major point there was they've only put 15 hours in because they don't have time. to be able to do it, and they don't have time for a guild. They don't have time to be social, so that's why they're pugging in the first place. Which I don't know how we solve this problem, um, but if you have any comments of how you would solve this problem to differentiate these people, um, how would you solve it? Um, and to be objectively, or should we just put the amount of time that you've played during a season, you know, on your Raider IO or Archon? Because the discussion went to Archon, not to get into the full thing again. And how much information do we need as leaders? Do we need to make educated decisions quickly without having to spend a bunch of time with going to Warcraft logs and looking at logs and things? Like, what other information do we need? That's really what the video is about. You can definitely go see it, a video or two back. So feel free to do that. So anyway, that's why I believe that gamers that are top tier gamers in multiple games are actually at the pinnacle of what they do. They get in, they get out. They're seasonal Sams, as the Potty C podcast with Max, Dorky, and Draknos. What they would say, they're seasonal Sams, and those people are at the pinnacle. They are running the highest content there is to run at the time it is to run it, and then they go and do something else. Those people are the pinnacle. So, minimal time, maximum effort. Yes, Deadpool. Maximum effort. But so anyway, that's where we're at on that. So what we're seeing is that MDI wants to change some stuff, which I think is fairly good. So it needs some changes, and I think it's going to move to a model that's more successful. So, and that model is probably going to be based off a MOBA model, like a Dota 2 model type thing. I think we already have half of the Dota model, with the group system. And so with the group system, what you do is the team plays best of 5, or they play a round robin in their groups, and then the 2 best teams or the 4 best teams, they play each other, and they play like a best of 3 with a best of 5 for the finals or something like that. They do that, and then those people get paid out. Where the rest of the group that didn't make it, they don't get paid anything. I don't know why. I don't know why it is structured that way, but it seems like that stuff isn't advertised very well. At least I rarely hear about it. You know, so of when that stuff happens, like I have to actually look pretty hard for it. I would think that would be pretty free information. Because when I open a game up to play Dota, I know when TI is going on and when TI is not going on. It's very, very evident. It is very in my face that TI is happening this month. And we're kind of going to go into those reasons right now. So if you've ever watched a high level MOBA event, it is a month long. Okay. And these, the thing is the patch is the patch, and they typically don't patch during the event. So for the month of the TI, they typically say this is going to be it. There's not going to be any changes. If there is a change, it's something because it's a glitch or something, like some exploit is getting fixed or something like that. So they don't, they're on even playing ground like this. The where I see the MDI going in the future is I think that MDI needs to push a draft ban pick format um, of some sort. Okay, going forward, and the reason why is because we're always talking about meta, but we all know the meta. We have seen the meta being played out. Now, granted, there's going to be a patch here in a week or two that's going to substantially change the meta for M plus going forward. So we're going to have that, but then there's going to be a meta that comes out of that. Okay, and what I'm suggesting here is that that meta will happen, but what else? There's this other, you hear this weeks later, like break the meta. No, the meta should have been broke like when the patch came out. Like that's what everybody's saying. Like, why do we have to break the patch the last 2 weeks, the last 3 weeks that the whole expansion's here and ready for the next raid into the next raid? Why don't you break this when it was new? You know? Why did everybody spend the last they come out with the midterm patch, and then they have MDI, you know, and there's the meta during that. Why do we have to wait to break the meta after that? That's dumb to me. Like, and this is what MOBAs do extremely better than that. Now, granted, I could hear the argument is, well, they have 150 champions, or I mean heroes, so, um, but they have 150 heroes to choose from. Yes, they do. So does that mean WoW needs more classes and more specs? I don't think it does. I don't think it does. What I think needs to happen is I think that Magnus Carlsen in chess said something very influential the other day. Actually, it's been a couple months now. Um, and he's repeated this multiple times when he's on the greatest stage of all time in chess. Is what do the fans want out of their champion? And I challenge you. I challenge every WoW player that cares about the top tier players of a game and the meta and what the game is in essentially. At that top tier, what do you want out of your champions? So your best players in the world, what do we expect from them? Okay. And in turn, what do we expect Blizzard to, like, for being the best players? What do we expect Blizzard to then give them? What kind of achievement should they get from this? What kind of notoriety? You know, what should they get from this? It's an important thing, because when you start thinking about other sports, other esports, or intellectual sports, like whether it be chess, whether it be Dota 2, whether it be World of Warcraft, I think we have to answer this question of what that means to me, you know, and what a WoW world champion, or at any esport, okay, any esport champion, what it means to me is that those players are the best in the world, no matter what I throw at them. Okay, so for instance, if I'm if as an MDI fan, okay, and I see a healer, okay, in an MDI thing, and he's healing with we'll just go with meta, we'll say Disc Priest. Because he is that good at Disc Priest, I should be able to ban that. I should be able to ban that Disc Priest, and he should be able to play another healer and do almost be significant and influential in playing that other class to heal. And now you're going to be like, Skunk. Well, it's a different class. It's not the meta. You're right, but these are the best players in the world. The best players in the world. Okay, and that is what I expect out of the best players of the world. okay, at World of Warcraft, and really about any esport. Okay, I expect them. So if we're talking about a MOBA kind of system, and I talk about a support player, okay, and their champion or their hero gets banned, okay, and they're forced to play another support character. They might not play a lot. They might not. I expect them to do well with it. You know, they're not. They're over here throwing 150 hours in this game, or you know, in whatever time. They've had 6 weeks to play these classes. These classes and specs don't change that much. They do change that much, but put the best things in sporting events is when you put the player in the position to make a play. Okay. For instance, if you look at Liquid's uh uh oh Queen Ashrat kill, okay, on their kill. Now, granted, they had 400 pulls, you know, stuff like this. If you look at that kill and you look at that hunter, and he saw at the very phase 3, and he's like, I have to go over here. There's a there's a soul or remnant over there that he has to pick up. If they don't pick them all up, they wipe. And the hunter, and he zones out and goes, I have one job. I have to do it. I'm right here. That's what that's what we want to see out of these players. Okay. Now, granted, he had 400 times, but that was the one time it mattered that the boss was going to die. Okay. And it happened, and it was equally eventful on this. Okay. It's different with other sports because, you know, the clock only goes down once, basically. You know, you're only going to get the, you know, in like real sports, it's not quite like that. Even in MOBAs, it's kind of like that too. But we do get that. So a raid is actually a bad example here, but M plus isn't. It is more like a sport because you get one shot at it. You get one shot to make that play, you know, and that's what's cool about this. Okay, is we can take that model and we can apply this to it to make it really, really special. If you do, what you have to do is you have to put people out of the comfort zone typically, and you're going to get these amazing plays out of this stuff. So because what will happen is maybe another player is playing their main, basically their best class, and the other people aren't playing their best classes. So this allows for the people that are playing their main that they're really, really good at, they're able to get that done. So, you know, that's what I want to see. I want to see the best of the best be put in situations that they're not necessarily comfortable in, and I want them to produce results based on that because they're the best. Because after all, they're getting paid for this, okay? And that's what my expectation is of the best, you know. So you know, that's how I answer that question for that. So, and the other thing is, uh, I don't I don't enjoy the week prep. The fact that you're gonna run this dungeon, or or and this the second dungeon, and this the third. Why do you need a week to prepare for this? These dungeons have been out for 6 weeks, and you aren't prepared to the Illidan, you were not prepared. Like, why is that an excuse? Like, I don't want my champion, the best people that play this game. You don't need a week to prep for this. You might a day, maybe. You might give them 24 hours notice because but they already know these 8 dungeons are going to be played. Now, the thing is why? Oh, they have to do runs. No, they do it on the fly. They take a risk. Take a risk. Don't let them prep for a week. Let them fail. We want to see that. That is the challenge. And on top of that, maybe it would be cool to lessen the key level to ban one of their classes that they're really good at. I heard Dratnos talking on the Potty C podcast about them. If they had used on day one, if they had used, if the most used class and spec can't be used on day two, that's a great change. That is a great idea. So, because what it does is it changes people, but there's still, you don't need a week to prepare for that. You've had 6 weeks to do it. If you can't put in the work, you shouldn't be there. And if you haven't put in the work, then you're not. You're just not that. You're not the best at that point. So either it's there's not enough people to play it at this level, and if that's a different problem completely, or why is it that way? Why do they need a week for this? And if they don't have the time, well, then they're not true professionals. And if they're not true professionals, then we shouldn't be calling them that. Okay. So we're getting into some like definitional things here. Okay. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, what do we want out of our champions? When you are a top World of Warcraft player, what does that mean to you? Okay. So, and I'm not saying that you have to agree. You don't have to necessarily agree with me. You can have your own definition of what you want, what a champion means to you. But I think at minimum, you need to answer that question for yourself. And then in turn, let Blizzard know, let Blizzard know that this is what I want out of my World of Warcraft champion, my MDI champion. This is what I want out of my raid. Raid's a little bit different because you're dealing with a different structure, but it still applies. Like, you want someone of the caliber of in leadership quality that Max brings, that Echo brings. You want that professionalism. You want that tenacity, that want to win, that push. You want that. The question is so raid brings different kind of different hurdles, different questions along with that. Okay. So I'm going to focus on MDI here, but I think it also applies to other parts of the game. If delves were like a competitive thing, which I think they could be, for solo content, or if they made special delves, to like run solo or duos, and if they wanted to push PvP, they could. But for the sake of PvE content, I'm just going to argue that is we would want the same thing. Is like, okay, well, what do we want out of a delve champion? Same applies. So, so the reason why I think that a week is too long is because that these are the best players in the world, and they really need it. They need to be, if thrown a curveball in some, a little bit of animosity, or not animosity, but a little bit of a difficult time that they're not used to. How do they react? Professionals react professionally. Now, they're either going to wipe or they're not. And the thing is the other team has to do with the same thing. Maybe they get something baked, or maybe they have to play the same thing. And then the thing comes, well, we don't have enough players to play that spec at a high level. Well, then, yes, I get that. I do. But then that's a team problem. That's a guild problem. That's a social problem. Okay. That is not the game's problem. That is not Blizzard's problem. Okay? So, for instance, for instance, if you take any like other sport, like it's not the NBA's problem that you can't find basketball players, you know, like whatever team. It doesn't matter what the team is. It doesn't matter. If you can't fill the roster, okay, then maybe you shouldn't be a team, you know? That's probably that's kind of where we're getting at, is like, what are these problems are more social than actual, you know, they're not Blizzard's problems basically. And if we're forcing something that's not doesn't need to be there in the game in general, then we can also do that as well. Okay, like, but at least we can address that as a community and be like, well, it's not like this because there's not enough players at the highest levels to do this. That's an okay thing to have. Or we can't fill somebody that plays all these classes at a high enough level, or it just takes so much time to do that. But at the same time, is that what you want out of a champion? You know, I don't know. You're gonna have to answer this to yourself. For me, that is not what I want out of a champion. You know, when I think of the best in the world, I want the best in the world to be able to play multiple classes. You know, because if you look at MOBAs and things like this, some people play 5 heroes, some people play 13. You know, they can do it, but they have to make it work within their pool that they can play. And sometimes you're just forced to play something you don't know. You know, and that's okay. But because you're the best in the world, you're gonna make it work. You know, and that's what we want to see. That's what I want to see. Because when animosity is thrown at them and a curveball is thrown, I want to see how they react to it. You know, that's why we play sports. You know, that's why esports are there, for all these things. You know, and you can go into any game and throw curveballs, ban to pick stuff. You know, pick classes, specs. You know, all that. That's what makes this interesting. What isn't interesting is to watch the same comp run the same dungeon with the same stuff over and over. That is boring. Okay, we don't want that. So something has to change. There has to be some catalyst that is changing, and you know, and maybe that's even goes to the level of dungeon design, to where there's not affixes based, but maybe there's a buff or debuff that goes on people, you know, or maybe goes on mobs during MDI week. You know, everybody gets it. You know, because that's going to be another complaint. Or well, we can't change the game for just, you know, this. Change it for everybody. Sure, go change for everybody. That'd be cool. Like, give everybody, because what you're seeing anyway is tanks going in there overpulling and breaking keys anyway, you know, because they want to be the MDI guy. I'm going to pull this whole dungeon and fall over in 5 minutes because my healer didn't know that I was going to pull the whole dungeon, and I pulled the whole dungeon, and now I'm dead, and now I'm respawning, and you know, now the DPS is down, and now we're breaking a key because my superhero tank wants to be MDI guy today. Like, you're breaking keys because of it, so you might as well have the same thing for everybody. You know, that, you know, so what you've done is you've set unreal expectations for a lower skill level player base. There's no different than regular sports. You know, for me to go out to the 3-point line and be like, you know, Kobe, you know, like, we're sitting out there, like, there's no difference. There's absolutely no difference from me being pretend over here doing, you know, from the corner fadeaways, you know, my back, you know, the ball court across the street, versus, you know, some MDI wannabe guy, you know, pulling the whole dungeon and nobody knows what he's doing. You know, there's no difference. And I think it's really amusing, but I think it's also the biggest difference there is you're affecting 3 other people on the court, you know, and and those people are like, why'd you break this key, man? Because you wanted to be super MDI guy? Okay. Okay. Like, that's cool. Um, uh, so, um, also is, you could change timers. You could change, maybe halfway timers make, you know, get, we got to get creative on this stuff, you know, if you want to make it fun and interesting for people, like, you know, and I think fortified and that stuff's all fun, you know, you know, and that's a step in the right direction, I believe. So, um, um, so I think the biggest thing, if you look into MOBA tournaments, um, and you look what they have is, especially if you look at Dota 2, their base level of pay for the TI for most years, at least the last like 5 or 7 years, is 1.6 million. And then usually the Dota 2 community, they come out with some kind of um, thing to sell or something, and they add money to the pot on top of that. And if you do the math real quick, if you just take 1.6 million, you know, and divide that by $15, that's like 106,000, 107,000 subscriptions for 1 month. Like, you know, at the end of the day, you also want to get paid. You know, if you're the best in the world and you meet that criteria, you should be paid for your, endeavors. Um, I think this has carried over on the rating front, but not directly by Blizzard, obviously. Um, but I think if Blizzard's going to hold a tournament like MDI, if MDI is going to happen, I don't know exactly the connections and the coordinations that Blizzard has from MDI, but I think Blizzard ever wants to support something like this, that I think they need to be on the level of like other MOBAs and things like that. So, and that 1.6 million prize pool is split up on the top 8 teams. So there's essentially 40 people plus coaches, whatever else that is. However, those teams are organized with whatever they're going with. Um, but so really you could assume that, and then obviously if you get first place, you get more money than if you get 8th place and things like that. I think that would be very positive, because I think at the end of the day, people are putting a lot of time in this. Like I said, the 60-hour versus the 15-hour guy. They're running this content at the top levels. They're considered professionals, at their craft. They're being invited to invite only things. They're they're also earning. They're obviously topping the charts. They're obviously topping logs. They're doing everything to be successful in this game. Everything. And on top of that, if they match then what Blizzard also has a say in this, is like, what is Blizzard's definition of a champion at the top levels? Like, they also need to answer that, because if their definition is different than the fan bases, which it surely will, it won't be exact, um then we have a difference in what that means. And then we can have a discussion: should a tournament even exist? Does the fan base even want this? And I do believe that there's a competitive scene for this, and the fan base does want to see this content. I do. I would like to see this content, but the players that play in it um, need to be one, stressed accordingly to play at the top levels of any class that they're given, because they're professionals. And when you're a professional, you do that thing really well. So, and if they need people to play more specs and things, then it's the job for the team to go out and recruit people to play that for their team. That's not a Blizzard problem. Now what, and then on the side note is they need to be compensated for that professionalism, basically, on top of that. So um, I think it's a two there's a two-step program there, and so but I think there can be like really good things out of this. I think there really can. And I think the MDI structure gives people like, oh, you can do this and this. Well, you know, if everyone had a free week to gear as they want, gear as they wish, you know, and have all the eye level they want, all the bells and whistles, you know, they could probably do that too. A lot of teams can, you know, but you obviously have to qualify for a certain thing, which is fine. That shouldn't go away necessarily. Um, but maybe give us a sandbox to play with that, you know, a little bit, you know. So, and you know, um, you know, it what does make sense is the qualifier to give them some time, but also it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to give them a week to qualify. It gives them like, why don't you give them 24 hours, you know, or something less, or just show up and we give you something, and you have, just like in a draft for um you know, MOBAs, you know, you have a half hour to figure out this team. Okay, you can ban and pick what dungeon you want to play, you know, and then you pick the class you can play or not. Ban that. Why can't that happen over a half hour? Why can't that be a thing? And is it not like, I understand if people don't watch it necessarily. I understand that. So um, and but some people may. But I guess, how do we know if we never try? And we see the MOBA model, and the MOBA model tends to work decently well, you know, and they're, you know, we see the numbers coming off them, and we see the hype off of that, you know, see the hype numbers off TI and things like that. So like I guess I don't really know or see why it can't be tried when I see that you're giving these players a week in advance um, to be the best in the world at something, and you know that just doesn't seem right to me when they should be able to do that. They've played this game for, you know, 40 hours a week for the last 10 years. You know, it's like they don't know how to play this game. You know, they understand the ins and outs of it. They If you're pushing 18s on week 4 or, you know, week 5, you're above average player. You don't need a week to prepare for this kind of stuff. You might need a week to prepare to, you know, run a rogue tank or something like that, like they did last MBI or something like that. Like, that's cool, but you know, you don't know. It takes 2 runs to figure that out. Like I don't think it takes a week to figure that out. Okay, I just don't think it does. And I think you're doing a disservice to the community by giving them so much time to prepare for that. And if the whole thing is, well, we don't want them to wipe because we don't want the embarrassment that goes along with it, that's a part of the esport. That is a part. Every time you step on the court, every time you do something like this at a competitive level, you have you have that risk of somebody not performing. And if they both don't perform, guess what? You do it again. You do it again. And you draft again. You do it again. So, you know, so and you're like, well, there's going to be so many moving parts. Well, yeah, but these people play this game for hundreds of hours, you know. Like, they're not new to this. You know, they need to be treated like professionals, you know. But they also, in the same sentence, they need to be paid like it too. And I think that's the other part is you can't expect that level of performance and that level of precision, and with this, and then to add you know, like a time frame crunch, they would say, oh well, time frame crunch. I see it as I am bringing out the best in the players that they don't know they are. That is my opinion of it. Is when you crunch it down at the last second, you're 5 seconds, you're gonna take one last shot. Who is in who's going to play that? Like you're gonna have somebody over here and you're gonna be like, you know, they got they're gonna take the last shot. Okay. So so I see that it makes players better. And that's what I want out of a champion. But also you put people in this they're able to make memorable moments out of this. I think that's the other thing. Is you have all these last second shots and these are memorable moments that will be remembered, not just on YouTube, but for all esports all time. For better or worse, because just as many last second game winning buzzer beaters that there are, for every one of those, there's probably 2 or 3 misses, and we all know that. And to me, that's acceptable. That's just a part of the game, no matter what sport we're playing. Okay, people, you know, people don't hit the last second shot every single time. They just put themselves in the best position to do so. And I think that's all you can ask for. The same thing with asking these players to be the best that they can. If you give them so long to prepare, well, you can give, if you gave the same person that played less out of the week a week to prepare, yeah, I'm pretty sure they can figure it out. So what I'm saying is that the average player, if you would give them a week, maybe even slightly above average, if you gave them the same if you gave them the same gear scaling to where I could have any piece of gear in the game and I can build my character any way I want, if you give person that's not there, I'm pretty sure they can figure it out. So, and and maybe do just as well. And if that's the problem, that is a more reason why there should be a lesser timetable to be able to actually do this. If it's a time issue on their end that they can't make time for it, then they're not true professionals. And that's just the reality of it. And in my opinion, that true professionals that want to be at the highest level of this game will make time no matter what. It's just the way it is. And if they can't, they will defer, and they'll say, sorry, I can't do this. I have other obligations. And totally understandable, but you look at any of these other professional athletes, and they don't do that. So they show up, they do their job, they perform. So yeah, and I think that's where the Blizzard competitive, I think that's where the World of Warcraft competitive scene goes, or it needs to not be as big, and it needs to also suggest that it needs to be well, this isn't what we're actually going for. If we're going to push Race the World first, if we're going to push MDI, if we're going to push all this stuff, then everything else needs to be pointed towards that level of expertise, that professionalism, and the achievement part of it. All that stuff has to be flowing into that. This is what we want the game to go to. If that's not where the game wants to go, if that's not where Blizzard wants the game to go, then they need to say it. And for me, that's all I want as a player. If that's not where they want the game to go, that's fine. But for me, and when I talk about when I see the top in the world, when I see them there, that's what I want out of my champions. And that's how I want my champions to be treated, going forward. And that's not just with esports. That's with sports in general. Anybody that can do anything very, very well at an expertise level need that. That's why they work so hard. They don't just need the recognition, but they need to be put in positions to where it shows off. It is shown off, and very effortlessly too. But giving them a week it takes away from the glory. Giving them a week prep does not help their case. Okay, giving them maybe like shortening it down or none, having a draft that you have to make decisions on the fly, quick. You maybe have an hour or two, you know, and stream those decision makings. Just stream why I did that. Stream why I did that. Like explain yourself. If it's a complex way of thinking, then explain that why I did that over this. That is what I want. That's what I want those viewership. Because at the game at the game's heart, those decisions matter. They do. So sometimes those decisions, maybe you don't want your opponent knowing those decisions, and I get that. But, those things will eventually come out. Like somebody's going to look at the data and be like, oh, they did that because of that. Whether I have to go look at it or not, look at logs, look at everything, I know why. But at the same time, if you're gonna bring a cool new like rogue tank thing, that's cool. I mean, that's cool, but you need to do that in less time because I think people there's a lot of people out there that have this knowledge. I think they just can't do it for one reason or another. It could be money. I don't know the reason. Chat, let me know down in the comments what you think it is. If you think that a competitive WoW scene is what you want, um, what do you want to see in your champion? Your World of Warcraft champion for raid and MDI. Or PvP if you're into that. I'm personally not into PvP. I don't look into it that hard. I'm sure there's hardcore PvPers out there that have the same kind of concept. This applies to everything I say about MMOs. Applies to WoW PvP, very one-to-one base here. Uh, Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. So anyway, definitely that's the end of the series. I wanted to get that kind of off my chest. The series started on the Archon add-on, kind of give some opinion on that. It went through and we talked about all the dungeons, how I kind of see them conceptually, why season 2 is very, very good, why the season 2 dungeon comps really make this for a very fun learning environment for everyone, to come together and just have a good time overall and enjoy, to where you get a good mixture of mechanics versus DPS checks versus healing checks, tank check, things like that, just WoW stuff in general. And then all the way down to this, that of when you break it down on the competitive level, when you break it down to the competitive level, um, of these, looking at the difference between what a MOBA competitive level, top tier level brings versus World of Warcraft or any other esport there. Um, but it's been fun. This is kind of my thinking. If I get some good comments, I will make another video on those, and we can go further in depth on this stuff. This stuff is just kind of surface level stuff, but it's also from my experience, everything that I've kind of thought about so far, being back in the game for about a year, after taking a decent amount of time off of World of Warcraft. And I just wanted to share my thoughts. If you share those thoughts, if you disagree, let me know, please. And I can, kind of talk with you about why, or maybe I can make a video about, well, this works. So anyway, I will see you later. Thank you. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, appreciate it. And yeah, see you next time.